Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. If you've been watching the other channels lately, there is at least one thing you've learned about the caravan of Central American migrants currently marching toward our southern border. The whole thing is no big deal. These are nice people, every single one of them, much better people than you are. They have the deep moral authority that comes from living in a third world country, unlike you, Mr. Pampered Suburbanite. They're not invaders. They are future model Americans. There is nothing at all to worry about, we're told. Well, that's been the chorus from politicians and news anchors who think they're politicians for weeks and weeks now. If you have any concern at all about this caravan, you are a bad person. In fact, you, sir, are a racist.
All of this for a group of people, a lot of whom are mothers and children, who pose no imminent threat to the United States.
To call this an invasion, it might be the most pathetic invasion of a country in world history if this were actually an invasion, but of course it's not.
The president sending troops to the border to deal with a caravan that hasn't proven to be violent.
Stop saying they're monsters. They're more mothers than monsters. Don't say it. Why don't any of you say that?
There's the line of the day, more mothers than monsters. Turns out that's not quite right. More brothers than mothers, actually. According to the Border Patrol, the caravan is in fact about 70% single men. Not families, women and children, but overwhelmingly single men. According to Mexico's own ambassador, many in the group are, quote, very violent. That's what he recently told NPR. So to restate, the caravan is in fact heavily male and highly dangerous. When the Mexican ambassador says that to public radio, what you're looking at, obviously, is racism, more right-wingery. Just kidding. What we're actually seeing is relentless dishonesty from the very people who are paid to inform us. There's nothing to worry about, they tell us, like we're children. But they don't really know that. They don't really know anything. They are wholly ignorant and yet utterly self-confident. They are good at moralizing and light on facts. So who exactly is in the caravan? A lot of them probably are what they appear to be, poor people from disorganized countries looking for a better life. It's understandable. But are some of them gang members too? How about drug dealers or human traffickers? Shut up, say the news anchors. Don't ask those questions. But if you really cared about America, you'd want answers to those questions. You would insist on knowing. Would you let your kids sleep at a stranger's house? Probably not. You love your kids. Our leaders ought to feel the same way about us. They don't. Instead, they see their own countrymen as the real threat. In the minds of the people making our country's rules, foreigners are always superior to Americans. Watch Don Lemon explain.
So we have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right. And we have to start doing something about them. There is no travel ban on them. There's no ban on, they had the Muslim ban. There is no white guy ban. So what do we do about that?
We have to start doing something about them, Don Lemon says. Keep in mind that he's talking about an entire racial group currently living in this country. What exactly does Don Lemon have in mind for, quote, them? Deportation, internment camps, more affirmative action? It would be good to know. Some of us would like to tell our sons what's coming. We contacted CNN today to ask them what they plan to, quote, start doing to this dangerous group of racially defective Americans. They never replied. Maybe Lemon will be more specific about his plans on tonight's show. But without even hearing the details, it's pretty clear where the people on TV stand. They instinctively side with foreign nationals over American citizens every time. If you're wondering why they're far more upset about migrant camps in Mexico than homeless encampments in Orange County, that's why. Just yesterday in the New York Times, a columnist called Michelle Goldberg noted approvingly the Democrats can win elections in Georgia if the bad old people who don't agree with her agenda are displaced by a large group of new people who do. Her piece was entitled, "We Can Replace Them." Imagine writing something like that about your fellow Americans. Imagine running it in your newspaper. They didn't think twice, because that's how they really feel. Peter Kirsanow is a U.S. Civil Rights Commissioner. He joins us tonight. Peter, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
Have you noticed the disparity in outrage between the way our television moralizers feel about the migrants camped by the side of the road in Mexico and their fellow Americans camped permanently outside across our country, the hundreds of thousands of American homeless, never mentioned in the media. Why is that?
Well, you know, I think you've expressed it a few times. We've talked about it, and that is that the left has an obsession with identity politics for a lot of reasons. One, because of moralizing, but more importantly, for those who have to put, you know, where the rubber meets the road, is for votes and for political imperative. The statements that you just ran were, you know, they're incoherent. They are, some of them are just frankly racist, and they completely misapprehend the concern of most normal Americans with the caravan. Most normal Americans are not concerned about the race, ethnicity, or the gender identity of the participants in the caravan.
Exactly.
They're concerned because they see 7,000 mostly military-age males who are jobless, who proclaimed an intent to violate our borders, break our laws, and they're not going to be moving to the neighborhoods that these journalists and these media talking heads talk about. They are not 7,000 unemployed journalists, for example, that are going to be going to Don Lemon's house and maybe competing with him for a job. They're coming to my neighborhood, inner city,
exactly.
Cleveland, and they're going to be competing against low-skilled workers. The data show predominantly black, male, low-skilled workers. They apparently don't have any concern for them. The military or the political imperative is such that they need and want to have more workers, more voters coming in from third world countries that they can indoctrinate. And this obsession with identity politics make people say and do profoundly stupid things. You saw it in the clips that you just ran. But they are completely divorced from the concerns of normal Americans with respect to what these individuals who are going to be imminently crossing the border are going to do with respect to the rule of law, our sovereignty, the public fisc, public health, crime rates, and so on.
So they are, as you just noted, the people you're watching on television and reading in the newspapers, to the extent anyone reads that newspaper anymore, they're arguing that this is a racial divide and that the villains are these, you know, industrial era, post-industrial area, middle-class white people who are all bigots. But the voting pattern suggests something different, that it's not a racial question. Like, people who make under a certain threshold, no matter what their colors, are sort of figuring out that they are all, regardless of their color, being replaced by people who work for less than them. Do you think that at some point that will be obvious? That this isn't about race, it's about economics?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more obvious. I know that in my service on the Civil Rights Commission over a number of years, I can see that there's been a shift in the understanding. Low-skilled workers get it. The elites very often like to engage in this type of moralizing, makes them feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
But until they are threatened in terms of their job prospects or the quality of life in their neighborhoods, they can continue to engage in this political correctness. We see it. As a labor lawyer myself, I see the deleterious effects of this. They are significant. They are often elided by our elites, by political elites, our social elites, our betters in the media. It's unfortunate, but I think a day of reckoning is coming. We're seeing it more and more, that ordinary Americans are getting it. And some of it actually has to do with the Trump effect, that Trump speaks plainly about these things. Sometimes he crosses or touches third rails. Right. He doesn't get hurt, but it engenders a conversation. A lot of people become apoplectic because of the conversation, but certain eternal verities emerge from that conversation.
I really think we should start importing millions of left-wing talk show hosts. I really do. And I am rooting for Jorge Ramos, who we interview a lot, to displace one of these self-righteous CNN anchors and see how they like it. And that's just the start. Waves of people with whom they can compete for jobs. Peter Christnell, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tucker.
Great to see you. America votes 6 days from now. Florida, Georgia are two states.